Yeah, one and then.
Good deal. Open your Bible to James chapter 1. You know, we have been so deceived by the religious system that something I said last week, the week before, I think, that there is no Old and New Testament, and Old and New Covenant. If you go back in the Old Testament, you look and you see where God made a covenant with Noah. People have the assumption God made a covenant with Adam and Eve. God had a covenant with Noah. Then God had a covenant with Abraham. Then God had a covenant with Moses. And you go back and you start saying, well, how come God keeps changing his covenants? Or how come God keeps changing his mind? And I mean, that to me should be kind of suspect for us to try to question what kind of a God is that that's being modeled for us, because he continually changes his mind. And I said, there is no real Old Testament and New Testament. There were really just scrolls and writings. Like, for instance, the Apostle Paul, when he wrote his epistles, he wrote letters to churches. They weren't compiled in a book. I mean, the letter that went to Galatia went to the churches in that community, so to speak. So they weren't put together in a book. The putting together of a book to give us a concept of an Old and a New Covenant or Old and New Testament was done by the Nicene Creed in the Council of 325, Nicene Council. And that's where we come up with the compilation that we have. Now, I like the compilation, but there are a lot of scrolls that were left out that could have very easily been put in, and then they would give some clarity to what's put in. Like, for instance, if they had put the Gospel of Q, it's called Quella. If they had put that in, because Quella was just like, it was called sayings, that's what it was. It was like reading the book of Proverbs. If you read, you read the book of Proverbs. I would read the book of Proverbs chapter a day for a month. So you do the whole book in a month, I did that for a long, long time. Just read the book of Proverbs. That was just a discipline that people did. And there's not what you would necessarily call a theme in the book of Proverbs, other than if you were to say the theme of Proverbs would be wisdom or knowledge or understanding. So that would be the theme of it, because all it does is just give statements that are profound. You follow what I'm saying? Just statements or concepts. A concept could be 10 verses, and then all of a sudden it give you another concept. You see what I'm saying? So it's not a story like we have out of Matthew and Luke, where we try to have a story about a character over a period of time. That's what they did with Matthew. And that's how some of the prophets were. That's what some of them did with Israel. Kind of paint a story. But if they put Quella in, then you could understand why they had the story that they have in Matthew and Luke. Because Quella gives you the foundation, because again, it's just sayings. It's just like if anybody ever takes on the simple task to read the Tao, just read the Tao. People say, oh, you wouldn't dare read the Tao because that's of the devil. That's Chinese or Buddhist or Hindu philosophy. It's probably one of the most profound documents that we have, as much as the book of Proverbs. It's just sayings. That's all it is, sayings. So if they had put Quella in there, then it would have been easier for us to look at Matthew and Luke and realize, here's how this story is put together. It takes a statement and say this. But to come up with a compilation that we've got, they left so much out of it to put it, and everybody knows that when the King James translation was put together, they left out, 13 books out of the apocryphal books of the Catholic Church. The Catholic King James version of the Bible has more versions than the Protestant King James version of the Bible. Everybody knows that, but they don't ever think about that. Well, when you go back to the Old Testament and you think, well, they all have the same in the Old Testament Bible. There is no Old Testament Bible. There was just scrolls. And there are a lot of scrolls that are left out, that when you read those scrolls and you get them, then you can see more about what the stories that are being told are saying. And that's especially true with the book of Genesis, especially when you read about these characters and you don't have a supplement to give you understanding why did it say this. With the supplement, you have a broader scope to look at it. It's just like Kirby's sitting there, and he's been doing that thing for a long time here now, and boom, he had a revelation right there off of that little thing to adjust the camera. He just got a revelation off of it, and he's had it all the time. It was there. It's made it simple. So he just had a little bit of wisdom added to what he already had, and that broadened the picture. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's a real problem. Dogmatism, belief systems are built on things that aren't complete. That's what makes them so dangerous. That's why and every one of you, I don't care who you are, here or any church, myself, every one of us have believed something that we don't believe anymore. That should be suspect to all of us to question the things we've been taught to believe. I'm not saying get rid of everything. You know, don't throw the baby out with the dirty water. Things that really do serve you, hold on to those things. I have no problem with that. But I think that the broadening of our scope to see things, so when I said that statement, there is no Old Testament, there is no New Testament, I heard that resound back in, well, people, oh, he don't have a clue what he's talking about. Well, I really do. Even though I'm a dumb, ignorant country boy, I do have a clue about some of these things that I talk about, simply because I've done some research on it. There's no Old Testament. There's no New Testament. They were scrolls, and the Catholic Church gave us a book and decided to divide it like that, Old Testament and New Testament. Because most Protestants don't even want the Old Testament. Why? Because the God of the Old Testament, because it's not understood, the God of the Old Testament, I mean, he was Hitler, he was Saddam Hussein, he was insane. He killed everything. He would kill people for cooking meat on the Sabbath to feed their family. He would just kill them all. Or go down to another nation of people and just kill everybody, wipe them out, children, everybody. I mean, you know, to misunderstand those books and to look at that God. You know, if you were a Church of Christ does not have in their Bible an Old Covenant. I don't know if y'all even know that. The Church of Christ, the only book they have is the New Testament. That's the only book they have. They do not believe in anything in the Old Testament. That's why they throw out a lot of things with praise and worship, especially with instruments. You don't find instruments in the Church of Christ. They're just not there. And the reason they do is because they do away with the entire Old Testament. I'm just simply saying that much confusion should cause us to question. And I don't care that anybody questions anything I say. I wouldn't blame anybody. I would question the things I say 30 years ago. I'd be in my face. What do you mean when you say that? And the reason that I would be like this, that's my nature. I want to know. I'm going to question. I'm not going to walk away. If I'm confused, I'm going to get in your face and question, because I want to know. And I'm not being that way to be a hard-nosed. I'm just curious. I want to know, you know. And so that's why I have done some of the research that I have done is I want to know. And so I say things that I realize I do not to be offensive. And I know people do get offended, and I don't want them to be offended. I just want to make it clear of what I'm trying to say. So if you have a question, something I said, just jump in and say, hey, wait a minute, brother, what did you mean by that? Okay, James chapter 1, look at verse 26. And we read this last week, and I wanted to establish something that I have said, that I am saying. I wanted to establish this, and this helps me to do it. Verse 26 says, if any man among you seem to be religious, you can take that any way you would like to. Most of us, if we read that, we would take that very negatively. And we would say, well, you know, if they're real religious, then they're of the school, of the mentality, well, I don't do that. You know, Steve wants those mints beer flavored.
Well, we don't do that. I mean, dear God.
We're too religious to have our mints beer flavored. You know what I'm saying? I mean that's just how we get. We get like that. How many of you have ever got goody two-shoe? That's an old Southern statement, I think. Do you know what that means? Yeah, goody two-shoe.
Yeah, I married one. Whoop.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Goody two-shoe be better than. You know? Ain't nobody better than nobody. I'm telling you, every one of us, as that song, I think that song said, we just trudging through here. You know what I'm saying? We falling down and getting up. And I think there's another song that said that. And that's life, really. There ain't nothing wrong with that. I think what is wrong is to get down, stay down. Now that's not right. You got to get back up. You got to get back up. So you get your wheels knocked out from under you, then get back up. You know, try again, do something. You know, until I think it was President Lincoln. And a lot of people don't know that. I think it was President Lincoln run for the presidency like 12 times before he got elected. He run, I believe it was 12 times. I mean, it's ridiculous. He started running back in the 1830s, 1840s. He started running and he kept losing for all kinds of reasons. But he finally got it. And he's probably going down as one of the top 5 presidents in our country in the last several hundred years. Verse 26, if any man among you seems to be religious and bridles not his tongue. Now, bridling of the tongue, this word right here, to bridle, actually I looked this up, and the word means chatados, and it means to curb the spirit. Now, we don't ever think about that. What does it mean to bridle the tongue? It actually means to have control of it. Basically, it means to control it. What would control your tongue? If our carnal mind controls the tongue becomes a cesspool of anybody, because it would just spew all kinds of things. It mainly would spew out of its feelings and at that moment. How many of you ever said something you wish you hadn't said? I know y'all didn't. I did a lot.
Just a few minutes ago.
Why did I say that? Can I draw that back? Time out. I want to pull them words back. They didn't really mean anything. It don't work, does it? It just don't work. Well, this is what he's saying. He said, if any man among you seems to be religious, but he doesn't bridle his tongue, we could probably, every one of us, fit in that category, because every one of us have been caught saying things that we didn't mean to say, but we said them, and at that moment, bless God, we meant it.
Right.
I mean, I was mad at that moment that I meant to say that, but after I thought about it, I wished I hadn't said that. So it happens to all of us. He says he bridles not his tongue, but he deceives his own heart. This man's religion is vain. Pure religion. Is there a difference between religion and pure religion? And I have been making this statement for a week or so, that there is a phenomenal difference. If we went back 2,000 years, or prior to the Nicene Creed, which established religion more than anything, and then the other religions, like a domino effect, kind of took on the same concept, whether it would the Hebrew religion or the Buddhist religion or whatever, they all kind of fell in this same religious mentality that the Catholic Church gave us, 326. If you go prior to that, religion was binding yourself to the source. Now, I don't really think that there's anybody alive on the earth, whether they're Aborigine or they are Atlanteans. They live in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think, did you say that he posted and said it was an hour?
Atlanta is 1 hour away from Atlanta.
Atlanta is 1 hour away from Atlanta. That's probably as true a statement as I've ever heard. Atlanta's 1 hour away from Atlanta. So if you ever go through Atlanta, you know what I'm talking about. Probably as bad as going through New York or worse. I do not know. I haven't been through New York. But if he deceives his own heart is where the truth is at, but we don't caution ourselves or control ourselves through our words by the heart. We do it from how we feel in the moment. And that's just it. That is what that is. But it can create a lot of issues. Pure religion goes back and binds you to God. That's the idea behind religio. It's to bind you to the source. Everybody wants to be bound to the source. Why? Because the source is where power is at. The source is where love is at. The source is where energy is at. The source is where essence is at. The source is God. No one wants to not be there. Everybody wants to be in that place. Especially if they have any discernment about them, then that's where they want to be. So that statement that James makes right here, pure religion is undefiled before God and the Father, is this: to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Now, I want you to look in the same book to chapter 3, and a few verses here in chapter 3. Verse 2, it says, "For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man." Perfect just simply means he's being mature. It doesn't mean he don't make a mistake. It just simply means he's acting maturely. Acting, instead of childish, he's acting mature. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man and able to bridle his whole body. Behold, we put bits in the horse's mouth that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great and are driven of a fierce wind, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasts great, and is a little member, and boasts great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. The tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defiles the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. Some of those added, that means words that's been added. That's made up word. Some of those words are added to the concept, but the concept, you can hear it now. Coming back to something again, and I said this a couple of 3 weeks ago. Jamie had told a statement about when you listen to someone telling about someone else's sickness and disease, and then you get in conversation with that, you are adding to the scenario, the problem, or the situation with the conversation in your words. That's a very, very profound statement and thought in my idea, based off these scriptures. Should we do that? We should. You know, when people call and say, well, they're sick, or you ever heard somebody say, well, I'm afraid I will get the flu, or I'm afraid I'll get sick. I mean, you know, there's a bird flu out there somewhere. I ain't sure where it's at, but I sure don't want to get it. Hello? You understand what I'm saying? It's like all this is out there somewhere, and it's trying to get me. The truth of the matter is, and I listened to that guy, what's his name? Nick Lane, that wrote the book.
You know about miracles?
Yeah.
No, it's not Nick. I'll tell you that. Stuart Wild.
Stuart Wild. Anyway, I listened to a YouTube. I'm not sure if it was him. Another guy. This guy is a biologist, a science. He's a biological science, like Bruce Lipton. And I really enjoy Bruce Lipton. I can't tell you why that he resonates with me so much. But everything that we say is out there, the bird flu or anything else, everything, every sickness and every disease that we say is out there, cancer, AIDS, you name it, everything that we say is out there is in here. It's already in our physical body. It's just that our body keeps it at bay. You see, if the spirit soul left our body, and our body just become a cadaver, it has all the organs, it has everything in it, it just don't function anymore. It has eyeballs, it has bladder, it has kidneys, it has lung, heart, brain, it has everything, but it just don't function. Why? Because the spirit is the fire, It is the electricity, it is the energy of the house. You see, if the power goes out here, the house goes dead. There's nothing here to power anything. The refrigerator, the freezer, the lights, the TV, nothing in it works. Why? Because the fire went out of it. That's what's inside us. That is God. That's the source. That's the very thing that we should learn to live from and fire our house. But now, think about it. It will fire the house for evil. It has no judgment about it whatsoever. I told the story of me as a little boy, curious little boy, took a bobby pin, straightened it out, made a plug-in out of it, and plugged it into the wall to see what it would do. And it did something. It burnt little old Lynn's fingers just boom, it just, because I short-circuited the power that was there. You can take your stove, turn it on high, and burn your house down by that same power. Well, let me say this. It's the power that's in you. With the words we give that power, we give that power permission and ability to destroy our own life. And we don't even think about it. We think it's somebody else that's doing it. Somebody else said it. Somebody else did it. And we're doing it to ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves with our own words, with the things that we aren't aware of. Many times, I think words are the product of the place where we are in knowledge. Well, what if we've been taught a lot of error and we live and our words spew out from that error? We will continue to produce from that error. And it's the power of God. It's the fire in the house that's doing that work. And I know that's so hard for us to put it down into our thinking and realize, wait a minute, if I want this temple to be the temple that God designed it to be, then I've got to get in here and find the wisdom to operate this machine that God's given me, called my physical body. And if I don't get the wisdom to operate, if I operate it off the cuff, ignorantly, I can destroy myself. And then didn't nobody do it to me. I did it to myself. I can become an addict. It's so easy. I can become addicts are all different kinds, you know. A lot of people are addicts as a result of being on a prescription a doctor gave them. And then whose fault was that? See, I'm not trying, it's nobody's fault. I'm saying we do all kinds of things out of ignorance. The lack of knowledge. And so I'm my life's been on a quest really to try to know. I want to know. I want to find out the truth, because I have found out that the truth really will make you free. Nothing else will. The religion won't. Religion will tell you that it will while it's binding you and tying you up with your grave clothes. Wrapping you up to where you can't move. I mean, they'll have you so stiff-necked, so good two-shoe. And you do it all right. You ain't drinking, you ain't cussing, you ain't running around with nobody, you ain't looking, you ain't doing nothing. You just might as well be dead. You know? But we're doing religion. We're really good at doing that. Let me read you some things that I wrote. True religion, coming back to that, pure religion, true religion, pure religion, is to bind you up, to tie you up to your source. That's the whole purpose behind it. Now, religion that's given to us through belief systems of the church is to bind us up and tie us up to the church system, to the priestcraft. In other words, to pay them to keep us tied up. That's basically. So there's a huge difference there. And I don't know if people see that. I see that. I want to try to, my quest is to try to make that clear. I don't want to be bound up by the belief systems and dogmatisms of a false religious system. True religion and pure religion must have a partner in order for it to work. I know this is a different concept, but just listen to it and I think maybe I can make it clear. It must have a partner for it to really work. In other words, to be bound up with God is one thing, but for it to work to your benefit must have something else to go with it. Because just being bound to God, everybody's bound to God. Everybody's tied up with God. Everybody's one with God because God is the fire, the light, the power of the house. Okay?
Amen.
You didn't have to get saved to get that. You didn't have to pray a special prayer to get that. You just are that if you're alive. If you're breathing, if you're standing up, you're breathing. God is the power of your being. And so it's creating. That's all it knows to do. It creates. Well, what does it create? It creates by the words of your mouth, because the words of your mouth are the seeds that sow and give you the fruit of your living. So it's not just religion binding you to God. It must have a partner. Everything needs a partner. You say a man and a woman have to partner to have a family. Ain't going to be no family without that. Ain't going to be no. You see, God, in order to have a beautiful globe, a earth, a paradise, He had to partner. He had to become one with it. He had to partner with who? Humanity. So humanity is nothing without God, and God is nothing without humanity. I know that one. Huh? You think God, well, if you want God to be all God is without you or whatever, you'll never know it. But if you know that God is one with you and you're one with God, then that makes it good. Okay, so like true religion or pure religion must have a partner in order for it to work. Just like a positive pole on a battery must have a negative pole. Raise your hood of your car. You aren't going to have one without the other. They don't work. I mean, it just don't work, okay? It can't work. Well, what in the world would religion's ground be? If religion is the positive, the binding to God, because God is the positive force, what would be the ground? What would be the negative? Philosophy. What is philosophy? Philosophy comes from the Greek word phileo and sophia. And you put those two words together, phileo means love, sophia means wisdom. You put those together and you have philosophy. Well, what is philosophy? Philosophy is the theory of how the house works. It's the theory of the wiring. It's the theory of the plumbing. It's the theory of everything about the house. Well, if we throw the philosophy out and all we have got is religion, belief system, we do not have anything to make the house work properly. Like I said, we could burn it down. So philosophy, the study of, this is what philosophy means at its fundamental level. It means the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge. Knowledge can be acquired by reading books. But one of the greatest ways, and I do not discount the reading, okay? I know someone said Paul had gone mad because he read too many books. But out of that he gained knowledge and wisdom. So the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge is part of philosophy. So to get the philosophy, you have to study, you have to gain knowledge. It's the fundamental nature of knowledge. It means it's reality, its existence, and so forth. That's what philosophy is. Philosophy, from the Greek, phileo is love, sophia is wisdom, knowledge. The love of wisdom or knowledge. Wisdom and philosophy are like chokma and bana. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on the board. Let's see here. This is the stick man. You kind of leaned a little bit there, but he's happy. Happy in his leaning. And
He would have beer flavored next.
well, he was hooked on that song. Lean on me when you're not strong. Help you carry on. Okay. Let's see. Now, this is the tree of life. This is, and boy, that board is flimsy. Is that make it off? That board is flimsy. But anyway, the tree of life. the tree of, you read about the tree of life, don't you? How many of you ever read about the tree of life? Everybody's read about the tree of life. We read about the tree of life in the book of Genesis chapter 2. And then we come over to the New Testament and we kind of look at Jesus as the tree of life or the source of life. That's how we look at it. And that's true too in its correct story setting. That's true because it's saying the same thing about you. Because you are the tree of life. And it's the religion or it's God that bound itself to you to make that life possible or to make you live. And so I did this last week. And again, you'd have to kind of look at last week or this is where the concept we have all heard 3 in 1. That's where the concept comes from, 3 in 1. So when the Catholic Church was trying to sell us a bill of goods, or the Nicene Council, 326 with Constantine, and you realize if you go back and really, you can find a lot of information and stuff on the internet about that council and what happened. Do you realize out of, I can't remember, 260, 280, 320 bishops from all over the whole Asia Minor area had come there to sit down and try to iron this thing out as to what was happening through the church, the Gnostics, because Gnosticism, Kabbalah, same thing, Gnosticism and Kabbalah, they're like twin sisters. They were literally like a brush fire that couldn't be put out. I mean, it was phenomenal what was happening. And yet nobody had control of it, which is really how it should have been. Shouldn't have been anybody trying to, it was just God doing miraculous things, phenomenal stuff, just sweeping, and all it was doing was taking philosophy, and that's the level of wisdom, and they were looking at the wisdom in Hindu scripts, they were looking at the wisdom in Zoroastrianism, they were looking at the wisdom in Buddhism, they were looking at the wisdom in Hebrew, and they were just combining it all together. It was not one group's right and everybody else is wrong. It was a compilation of all of this wisdom that God has poured out. What do you think the Alexandrian Library was all about? It was about a collection of this wisdom from all over the world. They had wisdom from the Mayan culture, from the Mayans over in Mexico and South America. They had that wisdom there in that Alexandrian Library. They had the wisdom in that library from the Celtics. All over the world, this wisdom, it was a symmetric thing. It was one, but it was made up of many. And so when they come up with this 3 in 1, they tried to sell this idea of a God anthropomorphic. Nobody ever believed that. Those bishops didn't believe that. They had a hard time with it. They wound up killing, like, I forget how many bishops that they wound up, Constantine had them killed because they were in total disagreement with what was going on. It was like a war going on there for days and days and days trying to get this thing ironed out where they could get control of this movement. And Constantine, just like he had his mother killed, he had his son killed, he was just a murderer. All he wanted was control. He was going to be the only person in the whole world. That's why he wanted to be the sole leader, the ruler, the king, the governor. He wanted to be it all. And he did. He did that. And that's where the Catholic Church then, finally, after they got rid of him, finally the Catholic Church made the Pope that. And you realize the Pope, and only the Pope, out of the billion or 2 billion, how many Catholics they are, 2 point something billion, the Pope is the only one that has connection to God. I mean, that's the religion. That's the truth. That's just, he's the only one. See, that's Constantinian. That's the Nicene Creed. That's what they did. My God, you have as much connection to God as the Pope as a dozen popes. You have a direct line. You know that song we sing, telephone to glory, your joy line. Y'all remember that? Yeah.
I can feel the current moving.
I can feel the current moving. Yeah, okay. Would y'all be happy on that one? So this 3 in 1 This 3-in-1 concept actually is a concept that comes from Kabbalah. And again, last week I did that because it comes from the astrological wheel and the 12 tribes of Israel. With this glyph, that glyph is probably the most important glyph that we could ever look at. And so I did this to give you an understanding of the 3-in-1. And this is the first division with Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. This is the second division with Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. And this is the third division with Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. So that's why I say 3-in-1. But now, Sophia, wisdom, or the knowledge of how the house works, is in these 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, 12 divisions of the astrological wheel. All of it's there. Everything is in that. And so that's why that glyph is so important. That's why that glyph, we have to study it and meditate on it and become one with that glyph. But we also need to do this, because the earth, this is called Malkut right here. And it represents the earth. So this represents grounding. The earth represents grounding. This is the place where it's grounded, okay? And then this, watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That Kabbalistic tree and the stick man are the exact same thing. So I can say the stick man being you, if you can associate yourself with that and realize this is me, as God built me as the temple of His. That's why 7 is such a predominant number of Scripture, and it's everywhere. 7's there. Well, that's why this is so predominant. But here, again, philosophy, this is life. This is fire. This is God. Well, I said, this is religion. This is where you're bound. This is pure religion. This is where you're bound with God. But what do you need? We have to have, it's like if I have other books that can shed light on what it's saying in Genesis 2 and 3 and 4, then it's clearer to me. I can understand better what the story's saying. If not, some of the stories don't make a bit of sense, and people know that. People know that. You go back and you read those stories, and they do not make sense. They are hard. You think, well, my goodness, no wonder everybody's so confused. The earth is so corrupt. The earth is created to be that way. The earth is created to be positive and negative. It's created to have sickness and disease. It's created that way. Whether it be in the plants or the animals or whatever, because it's inside you and me. And that's the one thing about this biologist I was talking about on that book. He makes that clear. That's another thing, that the bacteria that's in our body. See, when this energy leaves us, this life, this light, this fire leaves us, the cadaver still has everything. It still has the bacteria in it, but it hadn't got any life in it. So you know what that bacteria does? That bacteria will literally take over your body in 3 or 4 days, and your body will start to rot, start to stink, start to eat itself up from the inside out. Why? Because the order of life left it. That order of life is in it now. And what happened? That bacteria is still inside there. That sickness, you don't go catch one. What happens is you got some blooming stressed out trying to live life, or you got some mad, you got some angry, that you don't realize you gave these bacteria strength to do certain things, and they got out of balance in your body. And what happened? I got sick. It happens to us all the time. But yet we want to live healthy. Well, one way to live healthy is to live without stress, to live without all of the things that come against us from the outside, and listen to our body, pay attention, do some exercise, some disciplines. All right, let me read on here. Wisdom and philosophy are like chokma and vine. In Hebrew, this is called chokmah. And this is called lion. This is called good. And this is called evil. This is called male. This is called female. Etc., etc. This is called positive, and this is called negative. And just, it goes on and on and on and on. So that we can begin to see this is one side of the hemisphere of the brain, and this is the other side of the hemisphere of the brain. This is the pineal gland, which is the eye of God. But yet they're three in one. They're all inside here. They're right inside my brain. They're right inside my head. They're three in one in here. But there's not a God the Father, and there's not a Holy Ghost that's the feminine or whatever. And that really messes most people up. They have God the Father, and then they got a Holy Ghost that's, I guess, second in command. Also, I think most people make him a man, don't they? I'm not really sure. It's kind of confusing. And then they got God the Son over here. So that was the idea that the Catholic Church gave us, trying to take spiritual truths and twist them instead of giving us the truth. And there were a lot of wise people that were trying to say, no, that's not what Kabbalah, that's not what this tree is saying. That's not what Gnosticism is about. It's about the spiritual truth, which is religion binding to God, and the philosophy, which is the knowledge and the wisdom of how the house works. So we have to have them both. We've got to put them together. You're not any good without one without the other. You see what my point is? You've got to have both of them. You've got to have religion and you've got to have philosophy. It takes both of them. And the philosophy is the part where we get the knowledge of how the house works. It says on the Kabbalistic tree, these, Chokmah and Bina, are balanced. And here's where they're balanced. And this is part, you can't see it, but it's still there. Let me back up and say something. I said it a little different than I wanted to say it. I said that this is the right hemisphere of the brain, and that's true. This is the left hemisphere of the brain, and that's true. And then I said, this is the pineal gland, which is the eye of God. That's not what I wanted to say. This is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is the master gland of the entire body. Okay? The pituitary gland, and see, if I'm doing these right here, these are those glands, different glands, the 7 glands that builds the physical body. The 7 major glands. There's 7 major glands. You can actually look them up in the dictionary and it'll tell you all 7 of these major glands that build the physical body. The pituitary gland is the master gland. It runs the whole house. It sends all the energy to the whole house. But now this one right here is not seen, and a lot of the time this one is called da'at in Hebrew. And it's called the window or the door or the eye of God. This is the pineal gland. You see, now in medical science, they do so many things that they'll say, well, you don't need this or that. You don't need a kidney or a tonsil. How many of you ever had your tonsils taken out? See, they do that a lot now. They'll take your tonsils out. And your tonsils is a very, very important gland. I mean, you need it. It does a tremendous amount of things for you, for your good. People say, well, when you're a kid, you get tonsillitis and you get real sick, and they just cut it out. And you think God put something in there you didn't need? You know, and medical science is like that. They cut it out or cut it off. You don't need it. You can live without. You can, but you can't be what you're designed to be without it. You need the whole thing. Well, this window, this door, this pineal gland, the eye of God, this third eye, that we have is the eye of God. It's the eye that sees, and many times it's in seeing the truth, the knowledge of the truth comes. Do you understand what I'm saying? Seeing the truth, knowledge comes. I know that is so true for me. Sometimes I'm a very visual type guy. Sometimes I have to see that. If I'm working on a car or I'm doing something I can't figure it out, I have to sit there and get that thing in my mind's eye, my pineal gland, my eye of God. I got to get that thing and where I can see it. So, okay, now that I can work it out. I can find out how this works and that works. So this is a part that's left out. This is a part that most of the time we are familiar with and we're not aware of. And so, religion keeps us dumbed down. Now, go with me to 1 Corinthians real quickly. I want to tie this up here. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Now, I want to say something here again. This is a shockaroo. And y'all all looked at me like none of y'all knew that the Church of Christ is a fairly large denomination. They're pretty big in America. I couldn't tell you how large it is, but it is a fairly large movement. They do not have an Old Testament. Their Bible just consists of the New Testament only. The word, this is what I'm about to say that shocks everybody. The word faith is not found in the Old Testament. Not found. Now in the King James Bible, there are two different Hebrew words that are translated for the word faith. Only twice. But the word faith, like that's used in the New Testament, is only found in the New Testament. It's not in the Old Testament at all. In other words, it's not a concept. In other words, God didn't say in the Old Testament, well, then y'all just need to have some faith here. If y'all just have some faith, you could do this. It wasn't there. Do you know why? Because God didn't expect you to believe something that your gut don't tell you is the truth. But in religion, that's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to believe. Just have a little faith here. What does that mean? That means just, even though you can't see it, even though you don't have a witness of it, even though there's nothing about it that sounds true, even though it's all that, just have faith. Have blind faith. And that's what Jesus said. If you follow the blind will lead you in the ditch. They're all in the ditch. So the word faith is not found in the Old Testament. But it's all over the New Testament. And the word belief and believe or believeth. Those three words. All the same word. Pistis. Pistis from the root pistulo. Same word. Means the same thing. And it's used that way. It's used in the Greek, in the New Testament. And I want you to see what Paul says about it right here in one place. He says this. 1 Corinthians 15. If Christ, verse 17, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 17. And if Christ be not raised, your faith is vain. So he's saying, you can have vain faith. I'm saying, if all you have is faith, it's vain.
Mine says wasted.
Well, the word vain can be used as a word wasted. Yeah, you can, the definition of it. Now I want to show you something else. Romans chapter 6, I believe. You're close there, just real quickly. Go with me to Romans chapter 5. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 12. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned. I thought sin was on everybody. I thought he just said sin's on everybody. And then he turns right around and says sin ain't on everybody. Does it say that? Is that how yours said? That's kind of how mine said. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned. Oh, you mean there was a bunch of people back there in Noah's days that had not sinned? And I go back over and I look at Noah and his situation, it says the whole earth was corrupt. Everybody was wicked. That says it wasn't. That says that everybody hadn't sinned. I mean, you know, this is the kind of stuff that religion, false religion, is made up of. It lies on top of its lies. Now let me show you something else right here. Now this will blow you away. Look at Romans chapter 3. You with me? Romans chapter 3. Look at this verse 7. For if the truth of God hath more abounded through my lie. Paul himself is being honest. He said, I'm lying to you. But y'all eating it up. Does yours say that? Huh? That's hard. That's hard. I know your brain's trying to, what does that mean? For if the truth of God hath more abounded through my lie. So that means it's okay to lie if in the lie I can convince you that it's the truth. Come on, we all know better than that. No. But it's there. You know, it's there. I want to read you something here from Alvin Boyd Coon, and I can hear the wheels kind of turning and go, oh my God, what's going on? The importance of our words, our speech, is beyond our thinking. It is. Even in our casual conversation, we have to be aware of our conversation. We have to be aware. I mean, I'm speaking to me. I'm speaking, this is what is really burning inside me. I've got to pay attention to my words, because my words are life and death for me. My words produce the fruits of the tree of my life. My words curse me or bless me. And I know that. And if I ignore that, then all I'm doing is doing damage to myself. And so, so I'm speaking to me. Sound like I'm talking to y'all, but I'm really talking to me. I got a mirror right there looking right back at me, so I'm looking at me when I'm talking to you. But you are me. Yeah. Oh man, let me find this in this book. This is Alvin Boyd Coon, of course. This is a book we talked about here a week or two ago. Guy on Facebook posted this and said it's the most important book he ever read in his life. Alvin Boyd Coon. Now, again, some of these books I don't necessarily recommend that you read them, because I gave a book to a guy yesterday, and I told him, I said, look, this is not just something to sit down and read. It's not a story. I said, this is more like a college course. It's something that you got to sit and chew on. You got to really study. But I want you to listen to this, because to me there's a tremendous amount of wisdom right here. Wisdom. Deot. The doorway, opening the pineal gland. You know they are trying to calcify our pineal gland through many different ways. Through our toothpaste, through our water, through a lot of different ways. They want to calcify our pineal gland. They said, well, you don't need the thing, And there are ways to open the pineal gland. There are ways to help and strengthen the pineal gland. And the Catholic Church knows every bit of this. The Catholic Church, if you will look at the staff of the Pope had right above his hand, right where he holds that staff at. And you look at it, you think it is just a cross, but it has this thing right here, right above it. That's not a real good rendition of it, but it looks just exactly like a pine cone. That's exactly what it looks like, a pine cone. That's exactly what the pineal gland looks like. It's about that pine cone. Why? Because it's that important. You think they don't know that? They do know that. But if they can dumb you down so that you can get yours just all like that, you ain't gonna see. They don't want you to see. They want to calcify your pineal gland. They want you to be deceived. Okay, let me read this and I'll quit. The Buddhist and other Indian systems announce a dialectic that analyzes man's presence in the world as itself an evidence that he has wandered away from true being into false existence. His presence here is due to his sin, obviously committed in some former state. This is seen to match closely to the Christian doctrine of Adamic fall, or what we just read that Paul lied to us about. Some quirks or aberration in his nature at some juncture in his history led him to desire an experience of low sensuality and unreal being. And the cosmic law, which fulfills desire in life's conscious units, gratify his craving by bringing him here where he could play with the objects of his desire freely. But the desire itself is in the first place given force by the root cause of all non-blissful existence / ignorance. And in Hindu that's called avidya. Avidya. That's man's, listen to this, man's one sin is to have been born as a result of desiring to be born. And now this is not true. This is what he's critiquing, this concept and idea. Christianity has the basic concept and idea. Just words it a little bit different. It says you're all sinners. Every one of your desires is what's gotten you. You've got to kill your desires. In fact, the only way you're going to do it is to kill your body and get rid of your body because it's corrupt and wicked and go to heaven. I mean, Christianity and Hindu are almost overlay each other. Matter of fact, many of the Christian concepts and ideas come right out of the Hindu. Because the Catholic Church, the popes, they knew what they were doing. The bishops knew what they were doing. If souls were not obsessed by avidya, ignorance, they would have avoided birth and life. They would decide they ain't going to come here. They would have managed to stay in heaven. Or the dreamy blissfulness and have seen through the false glitter of life's superficial and tawdry attractions. For they would know that under its glitter it hides sorrow. I'll give you one other passage of scripture here. Romans, let's see if I can find it. Romans real quickly. I know I want to quit. I'm getting a little over my time here. That's not there. I thought it was a Romans chapter 8, but I wanted to explain sorrow and us living here. Anyway, men are unhappy simply because they are alive.
That's terrible.
Is that not sad? That's a pathetic state to be in. But then if you listen to the church, that's the way everybody is. I mean, bless God, it is pathetic, pitiful. He goes on and says a bunch of other stuff. Let me cut this short. It says it falls short of being a philosophy worthy of the name is evident of the surface, but also it's stated by Radha Krishna his analysis show that it fails to explain what it postulates. He's talking about, now Kuhn is critiquing this concept and idea. In other words, he's saying, it's so false. But it's the same thing true with Christianity. Here's what he said. He says the whole scheme rests on avidya. In other words, the whole idea, and you can see the same thing true with Christianity, the whole idea rests on you being ignorant. They want you to be ignorant. They don't want us to know. Keep us dumbed down. The whole scheme rests on ignorance. But we are not told how ignorance arises. The beginning of the circuit is not apparent. We cannot find its cause. It seems to be a blind end or an incomprehensible reality which we must accept unthinkable. In other words, ignorance. You just are. You can't help yourself. Buddhism seems to assert the eternity of ignorance. In the chain of causation, it puts first, for through it comes willing, and through willing existence. Now that's a statement by them. Kuhn, here's what he says to this whole thing. It seems never to have struck the mind of any of the millions of students of the Buddhistic philosophy, or any of its own millions of devotees, that this great religion's central doctrine, the postulation of ignorance as the primal cause of life and life's misery, is, on Radhakrishnan's Krishna's pronouncement, itself grounded solely in ignorance. I say the same thing's true of what we've been told about Christianity. We have been taught to believe a lie and call that lie the truth. If any one of these two greatest modern Hindu thinkers can say that its root cause of human sorrow is a blind end and an incomprehensible reality, Buddhism is asking us to follow a philosophy that rests only on an insoluble mystery. It takes no profound wisdom for any mind or any system to tell us that most of humans' woes springs from ignorance. Most of our problems, mine, yours, anybody's, really are results of ignorance. And you know yourself, if we can get enlightenment, if we can start to see the workings of things, then we can control our ship with just a little rudder, the tongue. So if I can see how my body is experiencing sorrow, I can turn the sorrow into bliss, into happiness. That's what my heart longs for. And I know yours does too. But it's knowledge. It's there. It's opening the pineal gland. It's opening the third eye of God so we can see. It's in seeing that knowledge begins to unfold and come to us.